Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to juice up your T16 maps for maximum profit. We're going to be talking Scarabs, Zana mods, Sextants, and the works like white Watchtones, and how to min-max that profit. But before we get into it, I do recommend you have a basic understanding of most of the league mechanics in the game, specifically Delirium. You do want to have a pretty good idea of how that works before we start getting into this. So if you don't, definitely do a bit of research. I can't explain all of it in this video, but I'll do my best. So step one, you need to pick a map base. So when we're doing Delirium, we want to favor a long map. That is ideal, and for that purpose, I would recommend doing Tropical Islands at T16. That is going to be one of the most optimal maps you can do for Delirium. So that's step one. Next up, Zana modifiers. Of course, the best one right now is the Delirium modifier. Even at the hefty 16C that it costs, it more than pays itself back, assuming you're using a number of other mechanics. So very, very good. And that's why I have the footage playing in the background here. You will see that I get quite a lot of splinters, and we'll talk about that in the breakdown in just a second here. Just a quick rundown though, the gist of Delirium is that the more monsters you kill further away from when you activated the mirror, the more splinters you'll get. That is the general rule, so a longer map like Tropical Island with a ton of monsters at the end is exactly what you want, versus something that isn't so great like an Ashenwood, which has most of the monsters kind of around the portal where you spawned. So definitely looking for a longer map. Stuff like Strand, Malformation, Burial Chambers are all also good, very candidates. But Tropical Island is generally considered one of the better and more consistent ones here. So let's talk about Scarabs as well as everything else. We'll quickly just fast forward here to when we pop the loot so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So when you finish up the map, you'll be able to click the Delirium button and it will spit out all of your loot here, and you'll see that I get 87 splinters, which is a pretty good amount, and that's going to be important when we go into the breakdown. So now that we kind of understand a basic idea of how Delirium works and kind of what we're looking for in terms of the kind of juicing up, we're looking for additional monsters. That is the key here, because additional monsters means our Delirium that we're investing in will drop additional splinters, which is actually exactly where we're going to be making our money. So the more monsters we can cram into a map, the better. That's what we're going to be aiming for with all of the rest of our juicing up. We're going to be aiming for quantity and pack size, as well as just monster count. So for that reason, you want to pick Scarabs that coincide with that. So of course, we've talked about Delirium, 16C. We've talked about the map. It's going to be Tropical Island. That's about 10C right now. The Scarabs that I like to use are as follows. Legion. This is going to be an absolute essential one for pretty much any T14 map that you're running. As long as you can break out the Legion, you should be running Legion Scarabs. They're quite cheap for what they return, and I don't think you can possibly lose money on them if you run a few of them and you average out the returns. So Legion is completely insane. It adds a ton of monsters, which gives you more simulacrum splinters, and it pretty much pays for itself completely. So I would recommend running any of the Legion Scarabs. You could run Rusted, Gilded, or Polished, and they should all make their money back and some profit for you on the side. So very, very good indeed. So that's the first one. It's a complete staple, and you should be using it on every map. Next, Elder Scarabs. So we want as many monsters as possible, and Elder Scarabs are a very good way to add a ton of monsters. They add unique null portals, which are insane for monster density, and they also have a chance to add squiddy kind of Elder monster packs, which are also super good for splinters and density. So I would also recommend a mainstay is the Elder Scarab alongside the Legion Scarab. Next, Breach Scarabs. So Breach Scarabs are pretty damn good. Breaches return a ton of monsters. They don't have too much on the currency side of things, but they're incredibly cheap. You're definitely going to make your money back just from Cellular Splinters when you get a Cellular Breach by itself. So Breach Scarabs, there's no reason not to run them. They're going to give you additional Simulacrum Splinters, additional loot, and they're pretty much free because of the returns you get from them. If not, they'll probably make you a little bit of money on the side as well. So more density there. I'd using Rusted Breach Scarabs because the Polished are more than 3 or 4 times in price, so I'd recommend cutting it down and using Rusted as well. So those are 3 pretty much mandatory Scarabs that you should be using, at least on Tropical Islands layout. So make sure you're pumping them on every single map that you're using the Delirium mirror on. So Legion, Elder, and Breach, all very essential. Next up, your last Scarab slot here, which you'll need to do a 4-way to activate and unlock in your map device to get it kind of to be a 5-socket map device, is going to be either Metamorph or Harbinger. Those are the two ones that I like to use. Harbinger will give you more mob density, but Metamorph gives you more currency return. So Harbinger doesn't really, it's not that good in terms of currency returns. It's just going to add some monsters to the map. You're not going to expect to get any insane returns from that one. Metamorph, on the other hand, will add about 3 to 5 Simulacrum Splinters, which pretty much completely pays for the Scarab cost, by the way. They're about 1C. And it'll also give you a chance at getting stuff like Fertile Catalysts, Tempering Catalysts, Exalted Orbs, all sorts of things. They drop an absolutely insane amount of loot, and they're completely insane at the T16 level. So if you can do Metamorph Scarabs in the Delirium, or even outside of the Delirium, I think it's a no-brainer. Metamorph is one of the best currency generators you can possibly put on a map, and I think it's completely insane. So I'd recommend that one. If you can't handle a Metamorph, or you want more density, definitely go with Harbinger. Those are my 5 top Scarab picks. You could also look at using cartography Scarabs if you really want map returns, but I find that's a bit hit or miss, and it's not going to bolster your mob count to give you more Simulacrum Splinters, so you're not going to be getting the most out of your Delirium investment there. So already, we're looking at a pretty sizable investment here, and that's going to scare a lot of players off. But watch until the end, and I'll show you guys how that's not the case, and you shouldn't be worried about investing in your maps, and it's exactly what you should be doing. So next up, let's talk about White Watchtones. So White Watchtones are also very, very good when you break them down on a map-by-map basis. So a Booming Populace is a Watchtone that adds additional pack size to a map. That means that you get more monsters in your map, and of course, we know more monsters equals more Simulacrum Splinters and just more loot in general. So that's going to be fantastic. You should be running these for the price they are. Would you, so basically the way you need to assess these things is, so there's 20C for Booming Populace, right? And you get 15 maps out of it. Would you pay 1.3C to have, I don't know, like 10% more monsters in your map, 10% more loot? Would you pay 1C for that? Absolutely. You would absolutely pay that every single day of the week. So you should be using Booming Populace whenever you can on your maps. 1C for 10% more loot. Absolute no-brainer. So next up, we'll talk about Territories Unknown. It's very similar to Booming Populace. Essentially, it adds an additional suffix to your map, which is going to add additional quantity and pack size. It will also add a bit of extra difficulty, but for the price, half a chaos, it's completely insane. You'd have to be a little bit crazy not to be running these at the current prices. So it's a more loot multiplier. It's going to give you more splinters, more loot, more returns, more everything. So Territories Unknown, a very big recommendation there. And you can see that all of these investments, like the Elder Scarab, Metamorph, Breach, Booming Populace, Territories, they're all very cheap. So you should be using them if you're planning on using the Delirium Mirror Zana modifier. Next, we have War Among the Stars. So this one is a little bit more expensive, but it's a complete no-brainer once again. So War Among the Stars is a White Watchtone which adds additional Shaper and Elder packs to your map. So it adds 9 packs for this one. It can go anywhere between 10 to 8 packs that it adds. Compared to a Sextant, this is actually a better Sextant. It's better than an Awakened Sextant modifier, and you can guarantee it. You don't need to roll it. So on average, it's going to cost you 2.5C per map, and in my opinion, this is a complete bargain. You're adding a ton more monsters to the map, more Simulacrum Splinters, more everything. You know the drill by now. This is an absolute mainstay, and I think you should be purchasing this if you can, even at 30 Chaos. Make sure you get one with full charges though, because that's going to be really important. Last up, Awakened Sextants. So on average, I use about 6 Sextants per set of 3 maps. So that works out to be about 2C per map. So that's extremely cheap for what they give. Having a full set of pack size Sextants on there is going to grant you 32 additional packs. You can also get stuff like additional legions, harbingers, breaches, and all sorts of really juicy stuff. So Awakened Sextants, again, you should be using them. They only work out to be about 2C per map. Now, if you add all of this together, it comes out to a nose-bleeding 40C per map, which is almost an Exalt at current prices. How can you possibly make this money back? Everyone's probably looking at it and going, there's no way you can pull that back. There's no way you're going to make a profit putting all this stuff into the map. And a lot of people are getting probably pretty scared at this point, but I can assure you I can assure you that even with the low prices of Simulacrum, that you will make money. Now, there is a point where it may not become worth it. We'll talk about that in a bit, but right now, at the current prices, it is absolutely worth it. So let's quickly get into it. So Simulacrums currently cost 105C. So that is definitely a very low price for this item, but we still can turn a profit. So on T16, with all of the above that I just mentioned, I get on average about 80 Simulacrum splinters without the use of Alva and without the use of prophecies. So this is kind of going to range. Maybe you get 51 map, maybe you get 130 in another map. It's kind of all over the place depending on where your lead mechanics spawn. So if your Legion pillar spawns at the end of the map, you'll get more splinters from it than if it spawns at the start of the map, leading to you getting more in that map versus another one. In addition to that, some tropical layouts are longer than others, so you'll get more splinters in those ones as well. So that's why my average splinter count is about 80. It's definitely not too bad. And I've calculated that I get about 28C per map just from Simulacrum splinters alone. So pretty much 3/4 of the map just from the Simulacrum splinters are paid for. This is completely insane. Simulacrums sell like that. They're very liquid and you can get rid of them very, very, very quickly, letting you keep mapping, which is fantastic. So essentially, I get all of this, 3/4 of all of this for free. So to make money on this, you're gonna only have to pull out 12 chaos per map. So essentially to break even, all you need to do is at least drop one T16, drop a few Templar splinters, a few Maraketh splinters, you know, a few handful of chaos, like anything will make it so you can break even. And then all of the stuff after that is pure profit. So when you're doing these maps, it's incredibly difficult not to make money as long as you're able to full clear them. You're going to be stacking currency to the roof as long as prices don't go too much lower on Simulacrums. Now, in addition to that, you can take this further. As I mentioned, you can use prophecies and you can also use Alva. If you do that, it's going to crank up your average splinter count probably to about 90 to 100, which will mean you probably pay off a lot more of this. If I crank this up to 90, let's just do 95, you can see that now if you just drop any T16 map, you're in the profit. So if you can crank that splinter count up higher, you're going to be making even more and more money. And to do that, of course, you just need to invest a little bit more. So that's kind of going to be the breakdown initially, guys. Hopefully you guys understood that investing more means more out. And it actually kind of multiplies all together to the point where you're making most of the map cost back off of just these Simulacrum splinters, which is very, very good. Now, of course, this all sounds very, very good, and you're going to make a ton of money right now if you're doing it. But there is going to be a point, if stuff keeps going down in price, that this may not be worth it. So I want to teach you guys how you can evaluate that and make sure that you're always making money off these things. You can tweak the investment. You can kind of decide, okay, maybe I don't want to invest so much on this. I want to do that instead. And you can kind of make sure that you're always safe. So all you need to do is copy and paste this, punch your own prices in, and the one that really is going to matter is the Simulacrum cost. You need to make sure you're comfortable with the price of that and what they're selling at before you get into this. So let's say they did go down to 80C. Could you make back 18C past that in just expenses? At that point, you're probably looking a little bit shaky. So you really do want to make sure that it's at a point where you're comfortable with, and you can do that simply with this calculation here. You can just grab the price of the splinters, so how much the Simulacrum cost is divided by 300 times your average splinter rate. And that's going to give you how much chaos you're getting back per map on average and kind of like your safe zone and whether you're comfortable with it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video on min-maxing. It's been a bit of a long one, but hopefully this guy gives you a bit more context on what I've been doing and how I've been kind of assessing it. I've been watching closely. Obviously the prices have been changing with the exalt rate. You do have to keep a bit of an eye on it, but right now we're still all systems go. We're making big profit, and you can expect to make big profit as well. Just make sure that you kind of evaluate how the prices are going. So with that said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you're enjoying this content, maybe come check the stream out. It's pretty fun. We're always trying new things and plenty more videos to come. So if you guys have enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.